Episode 10, The Shunammite Woman, Radical Hospitality. Welcome back to Her Living Word. The story of the Shunammite woman is one of quiet strength, radical generosity, and unshakable faith. You'll find her story in 2 Kings chapter 4, tucked right in the middle of Elisha's ministry. And though she is unnamed, her legacy speaks volumes. She lived in Shunem, a small town in Israel, and often the prophet Elisha would pass through. She noticed him, a man of God, traveling on his way. Most people might have waved or offered a quick greeting, but this woman, she felt compelled to do more. At first, she invited him in for a meal. That's simple enough food for the weary traveler. But soon, she and her husband went further. They built an upper room onto their house, furnished with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, a space just for him. Imagine that, designing and building a guest suite not for family, not for profit, but for a profit. Radical hospitality. Elisha was so moved by her generosity that he wanted to bless her in return. She never asked for anything. She wasn't angling for favor. But Elisha, hearing from God, declared that by the next year, she would hold a son in her arms. She laughed at first, almost in disbelief, but true to God's word, she gave birth to a boy. Years passed, the boy grew, and then one day, tragedy struck. Out in the fields with his father, the child cried out, "My head! My head!" He was carried home, and by noon he was gone. The very promise she had received seemed to be snatched away. Now pause here. Most of us in that moment would have collapsed in grief, but not this woman. She carried her son to the prophet's room, the room her generosity had built, and laid him on the bed. Then she saddled a donkey and went straight to find Elisha. When her husband asked why she was going, she replied with 3 powerful words: "It is well." Her faith spoke louder than her circumstances. She found Elisha and clung to him. And when the prophet returned to her home, he prayed. He stretched himself over the boy, and breath returned. The child sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. The miracle was complete. The boy was alive again. This story reminds us of something profound. Generosity opens the door to miracles. The Shunammite woman had no idea that by building a small room, she was preparing a space where resurrection power would one day flow. Her hospitality created the setting for God's supernatural provision. And her faith, her steady, stubborn declaration that it is well, positioned her to see God move. She teaches us that generosity is never wasted, that creating room for God, whether in our homes, our schedules, or our hearts, makes space for Him to do the impossible. Maybe you feel like your generosity has gone unnoticed, or maybe you've experienced loss, the kind that knocks the breath out of your lungs. The Shunammite woman's story whispers to you, keep giving, keep believing, keep saying, "It is well." Because the God who provided a son is the same God who restores life. So today, let her story encourage you. Radical hospitality, radical faith. These 2 together unlock miracles we never dreamed of. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Her Living Word. If this story encouraged you, share it with someone who needs hope. And remember, when you make room for God, He fills it with life.